Dakota Hudson dazzles for the St. Louis Cardinals, but the Tampa Bay Rays find a way to walk it off 4-2 in 10 innings as Drew Verhagen gives up the 3-run home run in the 10th inning. We're seeing great things from Dakota Hudson, but we're seeing the depth of the Cardinals being tested. They've shown good depth up to this point. It's being tested right now. We'll talk about Hudson. We'll talk about the depth as well as the offense on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Cardinals podcast for Wednesday, June the 8th of 2022. I am the host of the show, Lucas Smith. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen of the day each and every day. Locked On Cardinals, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, on this Wednesday, June the 8th. As I mentioned, the Cardinals fall yesterday by the final score of 4-2. A back-breaking loss, a heartbreaking loss, momentum-killing loss really for the Cardinals, who were coming off a good series against Chicago, who were coming off a sweep against the Padres before that. It's just one game, so the season's not over. Doom and gloom, it's just one game. But definitely we're seeing some depth being tested here by the Cardinals right now, as the Cardinals are turned to Giovanni Gallegos and Ryan Helsley to pitch the 8th and 9th innings tonight, or Tuesday night, excuse me. But we still see the bullpen falter late in the game. So we'll talk about the depth or lack thereof for this Cardinal team coming up in just a bit. But I want to start with the huge, glaring positive that was Dakota Hudson last night, as he, for the second start in a row, turns in a dandy, giving up just one run again, back-to-back starts of giving up a run or less for Dakota Hudson. And it was phenomenal yesterday to see him go 7 solid innings. Again, Tampa Bay Rays only gave up 2 hits. I believe he retired 9 or 10 in a row at one point as well. So he was just phenomenal from start to finish. He gave up the run there in that 7th inning. But overall, you cannot complain with what Dakota Hudson gave you last night. And this is something we talked about on last Dakota Hudson Day. The last time he started was that this is the kind of pitcher Dakota Hudson can be. He shined yesterday. Final line, 7 innings, 2 hits, an earned run, 1 walk. That's key. And 6 strikeouts. He threw 94 pitches, 62 for strikes, and he got 10 ground outs to 4 flouts. 10 ground ball outs for Dakota Hudson. That is how you know Dakota Hudson is on. He's walking very few amounts of batters. He's not giving up a ton of hits. He's using his defense to his advantage. And when you have a defense like the St. Louis Cardinals, that is a key. That is what every pitcher needs to be doing on the St. Louis Cardinals staff. And Dakota Hudson was able to do that brilliantly. Like I said, this is now back-to-back starts for Dakota Hudson of spectacular work. 7 strong innings back-to-back. These are the kind of starts, we can now say it plurally, that the Cardinals starters need to give them. Because the start before that against Milwaukee, he did not give up an earned run, but Dakota Hudson only went 4 2/3 of an inning, and he walked 4. In his last 14 innings of work, 7 each in the last 2 starts, he's walked a batter each. So he walked 1 against the Padres last week, and he walked 1 against the Tampa Bay Rays last night. Dakota Hudson, for at least 2 starts, has found it. He has found what has made him good. And even Jim Evans talked about this a little bit late in the broadcast. It looked like he's found a little bit of a cutter. Not necessarily a full slide piece, but a little bit of some cutting action. Struck out a Rosaranda and made him look silly on one of those. So now you have this idea where Dakota Hudson has this extra pitch maybe, or at least he's using it more effectively now. This is the kind of Dakota Hudson the Cardinals need from here on out. Wainwright continues to defy odds, but you don't know what that's going to be like for long term. Jack Flaherty is on his way back slowly but surely. Steven Matz, same thing. Michaelis starting to turn around a little bit, getting better starts here and there. We'll see what he can do tomorrow. But so Dakota Hudson now is for at least 2 turns through the rotation. has been exceptional. Dakota Hudson now sits with a 2.76 ERA, and 58.2 innings pitched. This is the kind of starter Dakota Hudson can be, and maybe 7 innings and 1 earned run is the cream of the crop, right? For Dakota Hudson, that's the best, but that's his best. That's pretty solid. The biggest difference to me, and it was talked about a lot on the broadcast yesterday, as well as since then, the pace for Dakota Hudson has changed immensely in his last 2 starts, specifically this most recent one against the Tampa Bay Rays. Time of game for a 10-inning game was only 3 hours and 13 minutes long. You got an extra inning in there, and you still barely went above 3 innings. This was in large part due to not a lot of offense on either side. But usually these Dakota Hudson games are not quick games. They're not just a breeze, if you will. But Dakota Hudson was able to work quickly against the Tampa Bay Rays, only give up 2 hits, or 1 hit, excuse me. The other 2 hits were given up. He gave up 2 hits. The Rays got 3 hits tonight. 2 against Hudson, 1 against Drew Verhagen to win the game. You do that, you're going to win more games than you lose. But Dakota Hudson, phenomenal last night. Last time he said, okay, that's 1 start. Let's see what he can do. He does it the very next start. We don't have to wait another turn through the rotation to see Dakota Hudson, to see his masterclass. We saw it last night again. This time he even racked up a little bit of, a few strikeouts more than usual. He struck out 6 in his 7 innings of work. Hudson for 7, Gallegos for 1, and Helsley for 1 is 9 times out of 10 going to be a recipe for success. And even last night, it was a recipe for success. Cardinals offense just wasn't able to get it done against the Rays pitching staff. The starter last night in Springs went 6 solid innings, gave up 6 hits, walked 2, struck out 5, did not give up an earned run. Whistler, a scoreless inning of work. And it wasn't until Kitteridge came in, he gave up the earned run in the 8th inning. And then Posh gave up the unearned run in the 10th inning on the sacrifice fly to Nootbaar. But usually when your starter is able to go 7 and you turn the ball over to your top 2 relievers in Gallegos and Helsley, that's a recipe for success. So the pitching side of things yesterday, up until Drew Verhagen, got the job done. And it started with Dakota Hudson up. We'll talk about the depth and the needs of this team in segment number 2. But this first segment, I'm just giving a shout out and praise to Dakota Hudson. Yes, I know that the Cardinals had the off day on Monday, so you had a little bit more rest in your bullpen. But Marmol said after the game that even before the game, he wasn't going to go more than an inning with Gallegos or Helsley, which is why Helsley was pulled after just 11 pitches. Helsley threw 30, 40 some odd pitches on Saturday. They want to try and keep him healthy and fresh for the entire season. And Helsley, with a .4 ERA so far in the season, has looked pretty fresh. But what Dakota Hudson was able to do is exactly what the Cardinals needed him to do in going those 7 strong innings. When Dakota Hudson is working quickly and when he's getting outs, he's a pretty fun pitcher to watch. He might not light up the radar gun. He might not light up the stuff, but that sinker ball has some tail to it. The slider has some, it's plus stuff, and he's able to locate it. Dakota Hudson is starting to be the pitcher that I thought he could be, that the Cardinals need him to be for the rest of this season. Because so far, through 7 days in June, as we sit here on June 8th, the Cardinals won 1 against San Diego, took 3 out of 5 against Chicago, and they lost to Tampa Bay. They're 4-3 right now in the 7 days as they played the doubleheader last Saturday. If you can tread water for just a little bit more until you get Carlson back healthy, until you get Matt back, until you get back, maybe Hicks comes back and he joins your bullpen, this team is in an okay spot. I'm not trying to ignore the problems this team has, but I'm also not trying to say this team is in deep trouble. Thanks in part to a historic comeback by the Phillies last night, Cardinals didn't lose any ground in the division. I say historic because Josh Hader gave up 2 home runs in the 9th inning for the Phillies to take the lead. But in order for them to tread water and to be successful until these injuries come back, guys like Dakota Hudson have to do what they did yesterday. You also need to see guys like Drew Verhagen step up a little bit more. But it was good to see Dakota Hudson do what he did yesterday and give the Cardinals 7 strong, dazzling innings. It was fun to watch. Now, when you turn things over to the bullpen, it's when you get a little bit more dicey right now because the depth has been solid so far, but we're starting to see the weaknesses in the depth because we're starting to see it tested to its limit. We'll talk about the depth coming up here in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about today's title sponsor, and that is Blue Nile. Because whether you're getting ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, you can find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has simple online tools that let you choose the diamond shape, size, clarity, as well as setting size and style. Blue Nile bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. And if you're just looking for fine jewelry but you're having trouble choosing, fret no longer. Blue Nile Jewelry has experts on hand 24/7, available to chat via the phone or chat feature. And you can find a memorable gift at every single budget with the help of the experts at Blue Nile. So make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Sports listeners, that's you, get a $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement. Use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. That is the code LOCKEDON to get that $50 off your purchases of $500 or more. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. You can shop stress-free and find your forever peace by going to BlueNile.com today. Before we get into talking about the depth for the St. Louis Cardinals team, or some might argue the lack thereof on the pitching side, I want to tell you guys a way that you can help make us better here at the Locked On Podcast Network, because we have an important favor to ask you. We here at the Locked On Podcast Network have put together a survey so we can learn more about what listeners like you want to make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us, me included, what you like and don't like about Locked On Podcasts. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now, and you can get started. It won't take very long, and every person who completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. So to take our audience survey, once again, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. Thank you in advance for your help. We've seen this Cardinal pitching bullpen, this pitching staff, overperform for a large part of the season. We have seen the depth be there. We've seen guys like Andre Pallante step up big time. We've seen guys like Nick Whitgren at times step up this season. Drew Verhagen, although he got tagged with the loss last night and was ineffective last night, and his ERA is very high at 4.96, at times we have seen him be effective out of that bullpen. At times. He's got 3 wins to his name. I know wins don't mean a whole lot, especially coming out of the bullpen, but we've seen guys outside of the 3, Gallegos, Helsley, and Cabrera, step up. And now what we're seeing with this depth being tested, the reason we're seeing this depth be tested, obviously, is because of injuries, but it's specifically injuries to the starting pitching. It's not the injuries in the bullpen. The bullpen is widely healthy. But what we're seeing is, obviously, Flaherty started the season on the IL. Stymied Matz goes down. Jordan Hicks goes down. The Cardinals are using their bullpen to fulfill those starting roles. Obviously, yes, we've seen Liberatore get called up. We've seen Rondon get the 5 innings that he's needed to as he was called up. We've seen, guys get called up to make starts. But we're also seeing Packy Naughton, who usually spends his time in the bullpen, get a start. He started last week, is also starting tonight. Andre Pallante, who was been dynamite out of this bullpen, got a start last week, and I think that he should get another start. I think he earned another start. We're seeing this bullpen stretched thin, and I think at the first part of May, and really for most of May, it was because of the inability of the starters to go deep into games. And now it's a little bit of that, but it's more so, or equal parts. The starting pitchers are getting hurt, so the Cardinals are needing their bullpen pieces to fulfill those roles. and the people who come to replace the bullpen aren't exceptionally strong. Because right now, there's a very good argument, and one that I subscribe to, that the only three bullpen members that I would trust to get a high leverage out are Genesis Cabrera, Giovanni Gallegos, and Ryan Helsley. And even though Ryan Helsley only threw 11 pitches last night, he's likely still only available for one inning tonight at the most. Gallegos last night threw 12 pitches. Last night, the best move for this team probably was leave Gallegos in a tie game or leave Helsley in the 10th inning. That probably was the best move in the moment when you look at it in a vacuum, just last night's game. That was probably the move. However, when you look long term, trying to keep these guys fresh, trying to keep them from being burnt out, taking them out was probably the right move. Your offense did the job by getting the run in the top half of the 10th. And then the person you brought in to replace Helsley did not get the job done. So there's a lot of opinions flying around right now for not terrible reasons that the Cardinals should go out and get a frontline starter. That the Cardinals should go out and get a bullpen piece. I would be highly doubtful of the Cardinals going after a Frankie Montas or a frontline type starter. Or a Madison Bumgarner that was also reported recently. Bumgarner's got too many years of control for a pitcher of his age, in my opinion, for the Cardinals to go after that. What's more likely, in my opinion, is that the Cardinals go after a reliever. They trade some of their outfield depth, they trade some of their hitting depth, and go out and get a reliever to help this pitching staff. Because they're confident in Flaherty to come back, and he looked really good in his one rehab start so far. And they're confident in Matz to come back. If both those guys come back and pitch to their capabilities, you move Palante back to the bullpen. You get another frontline bullpen arm. You got five guys you can trust in that bullpen if they get somebody else. That's a pretty solid bullpen as it stands. I would not be surprised if that's the route that the Cardinals go. Now the question is, or the question still is really, would you rather them see go for a starter or a reliever? I think we're going to have to wait and see how Flaherty and Matz do. Because if both of them perform, then like I said, I don't think we see the Cardinals get a starter. If they both underperform, then maybe you see the Cardinals try and squeeze in a starter. Maybe they're not going to trade any of their 5 starters at the moment, but maybe they try and squeeze in a starter for a frontline guy to have somebody that goes out there every 5th day and gets outs. But the depth right now, I will grant you, is being tested. But long term, when Flaherty and Matz get back, I still think this Cardinals pitching staff is in a good spot. I still think this Cardinal pitching staff is a strong one. And I think it's one that can get the job done. They just need to get healthy. And I know that every team is dealing with injuries. The Cardinals are not the only team in baseball that have dealt with injuries. They're not the only team in baseball that are going to deal with injuries. The Cardinals are not done with injuries. So the line and the sentiment that you need more than 3 guys in the bullpen you can trust is 100% true. I acknowledge that. How long is the front office willing to wait for Jack Flaherty and Steven Matz to get back before they realize we need to make a move now? Because right now, even with all these depth struggles, the Cardinals are still winning more than they're losing. Like I mentioned earlier, with the Brewers loss last night, they're 4th in a row. Cardinals sit just half a game out. Still, 32-24. The Brewers are 33-24. 4-6 in their last 10. The Cardinals are 6-4 in their last 10. So even with all the bullpen struggles, or all the depth struggles, I should say, you're still winning 60% of your games in the last week and a half. I'll take that. Maybe I'm being too patient. Maybe I'm being a little bit naive. You could say that, but at the end of the day, I do think that with time, this team will be fine. You're getting O'Neill back. He had a couple hits yesterday. Still things to work on as well, as he mentioned. Bader swinging a hot bat. Goldschmidt is Goldschmidt. Arenado has been more like Arenado recently a little bit. Carlson will come back. I have no worries about Carlson producing. Long term, this team will be fine. They just need to get healthy. Now, I'm not shutting out the idea of going out and getting a bullpen piece or a starter. I'm not saying no to that the Cardinals don't need that, because I do think the Cardinals should be active at the trade deadline. But the blanket statement the Cardinals don't have enough depth, I don't know if it's that simple. Cardinals have had the depth. It's just being tested to the max right now, with 2 starters being out and 3 starters being out on injury, if you include Jordan Hicks. Woodford has been solid. Liberatore, I think, is underwhelmed a little bit, but he was solid on his couple call-ups. Rondon impressed, as I mentioned. Even Fernandez, when he came in a couple weeks ago, he impressed. So they're impressing at least a little bit. You just have to hope that the depth won't be tested any more than it is. Let me know what you think. You can DM me on Twitter at LJFastball. You can reply to a tweet. You can DM the show on Twitter or Instagram at LO_Cardinals. Leave a comment on the YouTube comment section what you think the Cardinals should do about the pitching problems or about the depth issues that they may or may not address here coming up shortly. Got to talk about the offense from last night's game because it was pretty stagnant for 6+ innings, 7 innings. You get a run in the 8th, a run in the 10th. Could they have done more? Talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline.net and how it is the #1 source for all of your betting stats and your sports info. You can find the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including and not limited to this year's basketball championship matchup with Game 3 tonight, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals and Stanley Cup Finals coming up shortly as well. Major League Baseball, and of course, all of the latest fighting news from MMA and UFC, as well as boxing. BetOnline is your continued source as well for all of your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and much, much more. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action because BetOnline is where the game starts. Offensively last night, Cardinals only able to scratch across 2 runs, but it just goes to the point that I've been saying for a while that this offense is still a different offense than what we've seen. Yes, they only scored 2 runs on 9 hits. Yes, they stranded 11 base runners. Yes, they were 2 for 8 with runners in scoring position. But this is still with Brendan Donovan in the lineup. Really just out of him, even though he was 0 for 4 yesterday. With Brendan Donovan in this lineup, it just is so much more complete. And the Rays pitching staff, credit to them, did a nice job yesterday, especially Springs, the starter. Kept the Cardinals off balance pretty well yesterday. In the 8th inning, when they scored their 1 run, you saw Harrison Bader continue really his quiet hot streak. As you saw 2 quick outs, Nootbaar works a walk, O'Neill gets a single, Bader with a little bloop single to score. With 2 outs, and O'Neill with a couple strikes, you saw them get runners on, you saw them get runners over, and you saw them get runners in. This offense is moving in the right direction. Yes, even with the negatives that I mentioned still being obviously there and the disappointment of last night. You go to the 10th inning, this is where the real disappointment starts in my mind. You get a runner at first automatically. And then the Rays make a defensive mistake. Goldschmidt reaches on a fielder's choice as the second baseman Bruhan threw to third base for some reason, trying to get Edman. No chance. Nolan Arenado's hit by a pitch. So you've got bases loaded, nobody out. Nootbaar sacrifice fly. Productive hitting, productive out. Good job. Tyler O'Neill is then called out on strikes. Harrison Bader with a base hit. And Paul Goldschmidt thrown out at the plate. I thought replay, it was a quick review. But I think after we saw the angles coming out of the commercial break, I think it was proven to be the correct call at the plate, calling Goldschmidt out. Paul Goldschmidt, big fundamental, made a fundamental mistake yesterday in watching the ball at third base as he was watching the ball in center field as he was rounding third base. If he just puts his head down and runs, he's probably scoring there. And yes, you could tell me, oh, players do that all the time, yada, 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 yada. It's a common thing. Paul Goldschmidt is a good base runner. I understand that. But he is not a quick base runner. Harrison Bader, Tyler O'Neill, Tommy Edman can probably get away with taking a peek behind their shoulder looking at center field while they're rounding third. Paul Goldschmidt Cannot. And at the end of the day as well, you were running on one of the best center fielders in baseball defensively in Kevin Kiermaier. The Cardinals had their opportunities yesterday and were not able to cash in. So yesterday was a disappointment offensively speaking. Arenado grounded into a double play, but you had a 2 outs RBIs from Bader. You would have had another 2-out RBI in the 10th inning from Bader. You saw some good things from this offense. Some good things. 2-hit night from Molina. That was solid to see. Edman got a hit. He tried to get back on Pujols with the base hit even after umpire tried to punch him out on strike 3. The Cardinals missed their chance late, but I still think the Cardinals' overall big picture, this offense is moving in the right direction. You could say I'm being overly patient with the offense. That's probably an argument you could have with me right now. But I'm just being patient right now. It's June, trying to get hopes up too high or too low. I think long term, this season, this team is going to be fine. Get healthy. Get your guys back on the mound. Get your guys back at the plate. We've seen some nice performances from guys we didn't expect. Brendan Donovan, Andre Palante, etc. I think this team is going to be fine. Go out there, try and win the next 2 games against Tampa Bay. Packing Norton with the ball tonight. Likely only going to go 1 turn through the lineup, just like we saw him do against the Padres last week. He does that. Piggyback off of him, get some innings, score some runs tonight. It's going to be fine. Last night was backbreaking. It was hard to watch. All those things. I still think this team is going to be fine. Packing Norton gets the ball tonight. Miles Michaelis tomorrow. Go out there, win the next 2, win the series, come back home to Cincinnati. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Locked On Cardinals, everybody. Be sure to tune in to Locked On MLB with MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan as he brings some humor, a little bit of passion, and a unique perspective on the majors, both past and present. And he is free and available wherever you get your podcast, just like this one. We are over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for making this possible. The road to 2,000 has begun. It has been a joy getting on YouTube as well as staying on podcasting platforms. You guys are listening a lot, and I really do appreciate it. Feel free to reach out anytime on any of these social media platforms. Twitter, LJ Fastball. Twitter for the show, and Instagram, LO_Cardinals. Email lockedoncards@gmail.com. Love interacting with y'all. So I'll be talking to you guys tomorrow, likely after the game, maybe before. Stay tuned to the social media to find out. But it will come out tomorrow regardless. So until I talk to you then, be sure to stay safe, stay well, and have a fantastic rest of your day.